I'd best start with probably the most controversial question I could. What's the best Haribo?
I think the advice I give myself if I was looking back would be, you don't need to be in such a rush. You can take your time to back yourself, and always to remember that you're not always right about everything. When someone joins a business for the very first time, they have an absolute unique value to our business because they're seeing our business through fresh eyes. And that, you can only do that once.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boardroom Uncovered, powered by City AM. My name's John Robinson, City AM's UK editor. My guest for this edition is the UK boss of Haribo, Jon Hughes. Hughes has been in the job since 2018 and has previously worked at the likes of Red Bull and Heineken. The Yorkshire headquartered division of the German confectionary giant has enjoyed record sales in recent years and has seen its market share grow. But in a world where healthy eating habits are increasingly in the public eye, how can Haribo maintain its strong financial position and continue to be one of the UK's most popular brands? Without any further delay, let's dive in. Right, Jon, thank you very much for coming on Boardroom Uncovered today. It's great to have you.
Thank you for
I
having me.
suppose I'd best start with probably the most controversial question I could. What's the best Haribo?
Oh, the best Haribo. I think, I don't think you can answer that question really. It just depends what mood you're in, who you're with, and what your particular tastes are. Because one of the wonderful things about Haribo is that although we have one or two products that span the world, actually it's a very local taste. So the products we develop in the UK are for UK markets and UK tastes, and they can be quite different to what you might find if you're on holiday in France or in Spain or elsewhere around the world. So very hard to pick a best Haribo, I think.
Do you have a go-to yourself?
Depends where I am. I think Tangfastics is probably my go-to in the UK. So nice mixture of tang and sour and playful pieces. Yeah.
So I had no idea that if you buy a pack of Haribo here, it's going to taste different to if you bought one in France or Germany. Why is that? Well,
consumer tastes are quite different in different markets, and the way Haribo was set up originally was that we entered into different markets, but we operate a decentralized business model, and that allows local teams to develop products that are right for the local market. And depending on the team that were in place at the time and which products they chose to launch, those products can be quite different. So Haribo Gold Bear is probably our most famous global product, and that's sold in pretty much every Haribo market right around the world. But Star Mix, or Tangfastics, which are the number one, number two seller here in the UK, don't really feature, in the top 5 in France, for example. There's some travel, so in the US they're quite good fans of Star Mix, but they have other products that they tend to focus and feature on.
Right. Okay. And is there a bit of a Yorkshire flavour to Haribo, because obviously you're based in Yorkshire? Is there something about being in Yorkshire that goes into the flavour of the UK product? Or
I think Yorkshire's got a very rich heritage of confectionery making. So it was over 100 years ago that our original business, Dunhills, was founded, and that was because in the local area they grew a lot of licorice and they grew a lot of rhubarb. So the area around Wakefield in West Yorkshire, where we're based, is known as the Rhubarb Triangle, and as well used to grow an awful lot of licorice as well. And even to this day, we sponsor and celebrate licorice in the annual Licorice Festival in the centre of Pontefract. So there is a long history and tradition of making sweets in West Yorkshire particularly. And so the products that we make, yes, our original products, the Pontefract cake, which was created over 100 years ago. We still make it today in our factory in Pontefract. That's definitely a delicacy from the Yorkshire region. Doesn't travel quite so well to other parts of the UK. But the other products that are the best sellers here in the UK were all developed in Yorkshire in the UK. So Star Mix, Tangfastics, Super Mix, all of those products were developed by the teams locally here in the UK and West Yorkshire.
And you say that different products sell differently across Europe and across the whole of the world, but do the different products sell differently in different parts of the UK as well? People in Scotland buying different types of Haribo to people in London, for example?
Not really. There's some small variances. So the products like Pontefract cakes, very popular in the north of England, a little bit less popular down in the south, but the UK is a relatively small country when it comes to preferences and tastes, certainly when it comes to confectionery. So we don't see too much difference on a regional level.
Okay. I'd imagine that being the boss of Haribo is every 7-year-old's dream, being boss of a sweet factory. Do you feel that you're living your 7-year-old dream?
I think so sometimes, yeah. I mean, we're very fortunate to work on what is a fantastic brand and in a really fun category. So the work that we do, and we have to remind ourselves sometimes that, whilst we can be serious about our business, the category in which we operate and the products which we're creating are there to create moments of joy and fun for people. So you can't really take yourself too seriously when you're thinking about those things and developing new products. So it's a fantastic category to work on. And it's a great fun brand to be involved with as well.
Is that very much part of the culture at Haribo then? Fun, whilst obviously being serious about your job and you're a business, you're trying to make money.
Yeah.
But you've got to have a bit of fun at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. Childlike happiness is one of our core values. And the way that comes across in our business is we try to see the world as perhaps a child would see it. And perhaps one of the best examples of that and the way we approach it in business is we're prepared to try again. We don't mind failing. We don't mind, as a kid when you're learning to ride a bike, you fall off, you get back on, you try again. And then once you've mastered that, it becomes fun and you really enjoy it. And that's the kind of spirit we try to encourage everybody at Haribo to take on, when they're thinking about work. Try and see it through the eyes of a child. Would this be fun? Is it a nice place to work? Are your friends around you? Does it feel like a family environment? So it's very important to us that we try and bring that element of fun and childlike happiness into the workplace as well.
And when you tour in the factory, speaking to your employees, cheeky little taste of the...
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Well, absolutely. The best possible product is a fresh Tangfastics from the production line because they're still a little bit warm and super soft and very fresh. And that's one of the absolute treats of being able to walk around the factory and see everybody.
I didn't realise that the temperature was such a big factor.
It can be, yeah.
Oh, right, okay. But you must have to limit yourself, otherwise you'd be enormous if you're having 10 sweets every time you look to the factory floor.
Well, little and often, I think, is the answer. So yes, we do take our quality very seriously. So that means we do have to taste the product from time to time, as difficult as that can be for us. And particularly when we're developing new products, obviously we're doing quite a lot of taste panels and taste tests. We enjoy the product, but it's little and often.
Yeah, obviously Haribo have got really well-established brands that you've mentioned a few already, but you must always be thinking about new product lines that you can bring in. How involved are you with that, and how do you come up with the new lines?
Well, innovation is absolutely the heart of the category. So consumers are always looking for interesting new shapes, flavours, textures within confectionery. And we run a very detailed innovation pipeline. We look out over 5 years. We do an awful lot of consumer research to try and figure out what it is that consumers really want and need in terms of their products. What are the things that they're interested in? What are the interesting flavours that might be coming to the fore? And there's a continuous process of innovation and improvement that comes through. So we have a nice long pipeline. We're always looking to bring new products onto the market. In addition to that, sometimes we'll have a bit of fun, which stuff might be on trend at any particular time, or there might be seasonal products that we'll bring out where we can be, I suppose, a little bit more fun than the day-to-day staples. So we might bring out a football mix for the European Cup or the World Cup. We've had some fun with everything from llamas to owls to groovy goats, whatever might be trending at the time. Yeah. We will bring out some novelty items, I suppose, to complement the rest of the portfolio.
Well, how do you invent a new sweet? What's that meeting look like? It must look pretty bonkers.
Well, it starts with the consumer insight. So we spend a lot of time talking to and understanding consumers, how they're consuming the category, what things they find interesting, what flavours they find interesting. And then we map against a whole host of both occasions, so the occasions in which people will be consuming confectionery. And also we look at the types of pack formats that they might need. And then we try and spot those gaps in the market where we think there might be an opportunity for Haribo. And we've got a wonderful skilled team of marketeers and research and insight people. And we have our own in-house design team. So when the ideas start to form, the marketing team responsible for that can sit down with our designers and we start to sketch and play and draw to try and design the concept behind the products. And once we've got an idea that we think could work, then we'll put it out to consumer testing. We'll ask consumers, what do you think about this? Does it look interesting? Would you be interested in buying this product? And then we develop and refine over a number of months, actually, and sometimes years, depending on if it requires new technology to produce that product. And so we build that into our pipeline as we go. But it's, we have a lot of fun with it as well.
Yes, you've got to, I suppose.
Yeah.
What are the consumers saying then? What do they want from your products?
I think the most important thing we hear from consumers is that they want great tasting product. In any food and drink category, people are consuming because they want stuff to taste great and they want the quality to be first class every time. So they're the basic fundamentals, I think, that we have to get right. Products that are brilliant quality every time they spend their hard-earned money on one of our products. It has to deliver for them from a quality point of view. And secondly, they want flavours that they enjoy. Sometimes they might find them interesting or challenging. Other times they want an old favourite, the reassuring taste of an old favourite sweet.
Yeah.
And often with sweets as well, it can evoke memories. And you can have a product that you might choose to share with your family or share with your friends. And that then becomes a shared experience that helps to give a little bit more enjoyment, I suppose, to any given occasion.
Is it a challenge to be selling a product which is health-wise 100% bad for you? You talk about bringing joy with your products, and absolutely you have that when you have a sweet from Haribo or any other brand, but there's no nutritional value in a Haribo sweet. Is there a particular marketing challenge that you come up against?
Well, we take the guide from our consumers on that point, and what our consumers tell us is that they absolutely understand that Haribo is a treat. There's no hiding it, right?
Yeah, you're not having it for dinner.
We're not breakfast, lunch, or tea.
Yeah.
We are there as a treat, and we're there to bring a little bit of joy into people's lives. And consumers understand that; they recognise that. And so the marketing that we do is really about helping them to understand the range of products that we've got and the different tastes and profiles and textures that we put out. But as I said, consumers understand what we are, and they're happy to purchase on that basis.
Because there's a lot of noise in the news. There has been this year and for a number of years about children's health, children's dental hygiene, and obviously sweets would not help that. But you do have sugar-free options that people could buy, but obviously Haribo is not necessarily helping that.
I think what Haribo does is try to offer parents choice. So you're absolutely right. We have a range of sugar-reduced products. We also have a really important range of portion control products as well. So we were one of the first in the UK to bring portion control products. And what our consumers, again, what parents tell us is that they're a really easy, helpful way to offer a treat without having to be concerned about overconsumption. So what we're trying to do is help parents understand about the product and give them solutions if they are concerned about those topics, that we give them a solution that can help them while still being able to enjoy the product and enjoy the category.
Yeah. And of course, you started off your career, if we can wind the clock back, at Heineken as a grad. Tell me about joining Heineken as a grad and what your experiences were at the start of your career.
Well, when I first started, it was Scottish and Newcastle in those days. So it was, I've been in the game. It's been almost 30 years, so it was a long time ago. But Scottish and Newcastle in those days was a very proud FTSE 100 business, publicly listed, and it was the largest brewer in the UK. They just bought Courage, and it was at the time of a lot of mergers and acquisitions within the brewing industry. And I joined from university into a role. The first role I did there was in sales, and I thought it was fantastic. There was this business that were going to give me a company car to drive around London, selling beers to independent off licenses and wholesalers, and I got a beer allowance. So, as a fresh-faced student coming out of university, this was absolute manna from heaven. I thought I was delighted to work there.
Yeah, absolutely.
The business was very entrepreneurial in those days. We had some wonderful leadership with CEOs who really looked at how we could be fast in decision making, but also very customer centred. We spent a lot of our time really listening to customers and making sure that we delivered on the needs of those customers.
And then, of course, rise through the ranks, but then you've also worked at the likes of Red Bull as well. Tell me about your experience working for that brand.
Your Red Bull opportunity was really interesting. I mean, it's a wonderful brand to work on. There aren't many opportunities, I think, to work in a business with a brand of that strength where the original founder is still running the business. And that's what I found when I joined Red Bull. So it was a really, really exciting time. They obviously revolutionised the soft drinks industry. effectively invented the energy drink category. But what was really interesting about that business was that they took a lot of very smart people at a very young age and developed them very fast. So it was a really exciting environment to work in, generally very ambitious, but a lot of very smart people doing some good things. So it was a really good, fun environment to work in.
Is it fundamentally different selling beers for Heineken, Red Bull cans, to selling Haribo?
I think the consumer's different. So I think you have to figure out what are the innate consumer needs at a really deep level that drive the consumers of those different categories. And they are very different, I think, from a consumer point of view. From a customer point of view, how we deal with our trade customers, broadly what they need from suppliers are fairly consistent needs and wants. They want great service, great availability, great products that sell, and they want good ideas, good account management, and they want products that are going to help them grow their business as well. So from the customer side, you could argue that what customers want really is quite similar from different suppliers, but I think the consumers are very different.
And what attracted you to move on to Haribo?
Well, I was looking for an opportunity perhaps a little bit closer to home. So I've moved up to Yorkshire, was looking for an opportunity that would allow me to, I suppose, be a little bit closer to home, but also into a business where I felt the values were well suited to what I aligned to, and an opportunity for real growth as well. Haribo was, I think, at the start of quite an exciting phase of growth at that point. So it was a really exciting opportunity to grow and allow the support for that growth to come through.
You say that Haribo's got the values that you align to. How important is that to you when finding a job? Is that something you really research into and really consider when applying for a role?
Certainly, yeah. I think it's really important that you feel comfortable in the environment that you're working with, and that you're working with colleagues who share the same value set as you. And of course, it takes time, I think, to develop that and understand what's important to you. And over time, I've been fortunate enough to work in lots of different environments and different types of businesses. But I suppose as I look towards the middle of my career, I really want to work in an environment where the values are shared. And that is an important factor. And I think more so now than ever, actually, the younger people that we see, younger colleagues that we see joining the business, are looking for businesses with the right set of values that align to them. So it's important for us. Our values are central to our organisational culture. And I think it helps us attract the right talent and the best talent into the business as well.
What are Haribo's values then, and why are they unique to this company?
Well, we have a number of values that set through from the organisations. A couple that perhaps I've already talked a little bit about, childlike happiness, and that's probably one of the more unique ones that we have. Independence is also a very important value for us. We are a family-owned business. We have no external shareholders, and that really sets the tone for how we see the business in the long term. We can genuinely make decisions for the long-term health of the business, and we think in generations, not in quarters or years. And that's a very different environment to if you're working in a publicly listed business or a private equity-backed business where, of course, some of the goals and targets are a little bit more short-term. We're fortunate in that we don't have that. And so we encourage independence through all of our colleagues. We encourage them to think independently, to act independently. And that also fits with the decentralized model that we have in the business as well, where we encourage the market teams to run their own businesses as if they were themselves, with independent thought, whilst obviously being part of the Haribo group. We also have trust as a very important value. Particularly when you're operating a decentralized business, you have to implicitly trust the teams that are running those businesses right across the world. And we take that value from the group and we try to instill that as much as we can within the UK organisation as well. So trust always starts with the first step. But our view is always that we trust people. We try to empower them to do the right things. And we try to keep out of the way as much as we can and let them get on with their job. We don't micromanage. We don't helicopter over people. The important thing for us is that we hire good people, we help and we support them, but we trust them implicitly to do the best job that they can every day. And that's a really important value that sits through our organisation.
That must be very challenging if there's an area of the business that you're responsible for and it's not doing as well for whatever reason. It must be difficult as the top boss not to helicopter in and to micromanage and actually live up to those values? Because whilst those values are obviously nobody can speak against them, it's one thing saying that when times are good, it's another thing entirely when things are bad.
It's always difficult. If performance isn't quite where we would want it to be, you've got to try and understand and help the teams understand what is the driver of that performance. Fortunately, we're in a position where our performance continues to be good, but of course there are occasionally some areas where you might have to go in and ask the right questions. But generally, my experience is that teams recognise themselves where their performance gaps might be and the areas that they might need to improve on, or the areas that they might need to improve their skill on. When you ask the right questions, I think most people will be able to come up with pretty good answers to the areas that they need to focus on, they need to work on.
Yeah.
And particularly if you spend a lot of time hiring and making sure that people are in the right positions, they're given the right training, the right support. People come to work to do a great job. I don't know anybody that comes through our doors every day with the intention of doing something wrong or making a mistake or not performing as best as they can do that day. So our job as leaders in the organisation is to try and remove any barriers and help them perform as best as they can every day. Coming in and trying to tell them how to do their job, doesn't help anybody. And certainly my belief is that there are people in the teams who know the day job far better than I do. So it's not my place to come in and try and tell them how to do their day jobs.
And it sounds like that fits your leadership style as well. How would you describe it?
Yeah, I see myself, I have a role in the organisation as much as anybody else does. And I think as a leader, what I try and do is get the right team of people together so that we have a strategy that everybody understands, that's well communicated through the organisation. And then really I try and stay out of the way as much as I possibly can. I see my role ideally as someone who can support, someone who can coach, someone who can bring people or teams together if we're not quite aligned on a certain area or we need some support, then I can come in and try and help people to do that. But it's very much a hands-off style. I firmly believe in letting people get on with their jobs, and really my role is one to help them, coach them, support them, listen to them, and try and help them deliver on their goals every day that they come to work.
Of course, you joined Haribo not in the top job, you got promoted to it. Tell me about that process. Was it a tap on the shoulder? Was it a formal interview process? Was it interviews and tests and taste tests? And did you have to come up with a new sweet yourself? Was it like The Apprentice? What was it like?
No, it wasn't really like that. When I first joined Haribo, there was a very rigorous process, rigorous assessment process, as you would expect joining a company.
Blind taste test, am I imagining?
There was no tasting. There was no testing involved. But actually, I got the opportunity to meet lots of people in the organisation, both in the UK and also at a global level, which was fantastic. And there was quite a rigorous process when I first joined the business. The change in role came about because the previous leader of the UK organisation was promoted up to the group level, up to the global level. He had hired me into the UK business. I'd worked quite closely with him. So he was well aware of me and what I stood for and my capability. So I think at that stage, there wasn't really a need for any more formal interviews. It would have been, I think, quite a weird setup to suddenly go from working together to suddenly being interviewed by someone that I'd worked closely with for some time. But of course, there were conversations around how I would approach the role, what my vision for the role would be, and I had some discussions again with colleagues at a group level as well before I took the role on.
Your time, obviously, joining Haribo and becoming the managing director of the UK arm, it's your first job right at the top of an organisation. When you first took that on, obviously you've been in the job for a few years now, what was it like adjusting to being the person that everybody reports to and being that ultimate responsibility?
Well, I think the way I've tried to set up the leadership team is that, as I said, we work on a collegiate basis, so we work as a team. So I don't really see it quite that way, actually. I think there's lots of functions who report into functional leaders, and together as a leadership team, we try and run the business together as one team. But I think one of the most challenging things is, when you've grown up in one particular function, you obviously develop a lot of experience in that one function. And then you find yourself, I guess, responsible for some other areas of the business, areas where you don't have any functional expertise.
Yeah.
And that's where I think it's much more challenging as a leader, but it forces you actually to lead in a different way. For example, if I take HR, I'm not an HR specialist or an HR professional, so I can't lead that team in the same way that I might lead a commercial team where I've grown up through my career. So actually what I talked earlier about my style of leadership comes from the fact that you have to entrust the experts to get on with their job. Because I can't be an expert in every function.
Yeah.
I have to let the leaders and the people in those teams run their functions as best as they see fit.
Did you always plan to be the top boss of a company, or is it something that organically happened in your career and the opportunities fallen in front of you, but it was never the ultimate goal?
I don't think I ever had a sort of written career path in that sense. I know some people have said that if you write these things down, they're more likely to happen. I'm not sure I was that well organised in the early part of my career, to be honest. I think if I go back to perhaps my school days, and my parents would tell you I was never very good at being told what to do. So I think perhaps having the opportunity to work independently is what drove me more than a job title or a position. I've always enjoyed roles where I can work independently the most. But these opportunities fall into place. There was no grand plan. And I've always been very happy doing the jobs that I've done over the years. And I've always firmly believed that the first job, if you do want to develop your career, the first thing you have to do is be as good as you can be at the job you've got and not worry too much about what might come next. And I think that's probably good advice that served me okay so far.
Yes, you're not done too bad, to be fair, by following that advice. Obviously, we've talked about you having the occasional sweet from the production line when you're going around the factory. But apart from that, what would you say is the best thing about your job right now?
I think it's the variety and being able to work with different teams right across the organisation. And I know it's a cliche and lots of people who've sat in this chair have said it before, but generally no 2 days are the same. And so it's the opportunity to work with lots of different teams to develop and grow the business. We've recently started to roll out a chain of our own shops. That's a completely different part of the business that's opened up a whole new opportunity for the brand, but it's also enabled us to develop a whole new team of people. So we've been inviting people with a specialism in retail into the business, and that's new, and they've got new ideas and thoughts about the Haribo brand and the business that we're operating. So I think the best part is really the variety of it and the chance to work with so many different people who've all got lots of passion and lots of enthusiasm for the products that we sell.
You probably guess what's coming now. Not every job is perfect. What is the worst aspect of your job?
The worst aspect of my job? It's a difficult question. I generally don't think there are too many worst aspects of my job. I'm very fortunate.
This is something that's a particular challenge.
I think that the difficult things are always. I think when it comes to business planning, it's always tricky. So we're trying to manage, I guess, external stakeholders and the owners of the business and the ambition that we have and the ambition that they have for the business, and that always takes a little bit of alignment to get right. And I find doing probably more interesting than planning. So maybe that's one area where it takes a little bit more thought than the day job.
Very well navigated, by the way. Looking back over your career to date, almost 3 decades or so, is there something that stands out as your biggest success, something that you're most proud of?
I think there are different bits across the different careers that I've had and the different organisations that I've had. But if I look back at my time so far at Haribo, I think, as I talked earlier, the creation and the start and the rollout of our retail business I think has been a big change for the organisation, and I think it will create a long-term lasting change for the organisation, and that's to be able to be a part of something right at the start and to help develop that business unit is one thing that I'll look back on, I think, and always be proud of.
And again, looking back over the whole of your career so far, is there something that stands out that you maybe could have done better? Looking back, there's maybe a tinge of regret that you could have performed better and got a better outcome.
Sometimes I think it's always interesting when you look back on careers and try and figure out what could I do differently. I think every day I reflect there's probably things that I could have done differently or I could have done better every single day actually, and every day is an opportunity to learn and develop. I think in the past, certainly in my early days, I could have been too optimistic, perhaps a little bit too challenging sometimes. It's difficult when you're ambitious and optimistic, and you want to move at a really fast pace. Sometimes you have to temper that with a little bit of realism. So I like to think that I've probably not slowed down too much, but I think I'm probably a little bit more realistic now than perhaps I was when I started about the pace of achievement and the pace of change that you can put through organisations.
Is that a bit of advice that you'd give your younger self then, if you could go back in the time machine and talk to that young John who was just starting out at your first job out of university? Is that the bit of advice that you'd give him?
I think so. I think the advice I give myself if I was looking back would be, you don't need to be in such a rush. You can take your time to back yourself, and always to remember that you're not always right about everything. And I think one of the things I've learned over the years is it's perfectly possible for two people to be completely right about the best way to solve a problem. There are different paths that you can take to solve problems. And quite a lot, in my experience in the past, any tension in organisations has been when people become quite dogmatic about what they believe is the right way to do things. So I think taking a pragmatic approach, and as I said earlier, trusting people to do what they think is right, is a really interesting lesson to learn as well.
But obviously, you've got all sorts of job opportunities at Haribo. You could be on the factory floor, you could be part of the management like yourself. But if I joined Haribo on the factory floor, is it possible for me to rise up to take your position? Is there a career path that somebody can go on?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things we're very passionate about is our role within the local community, really encouraging people who live in the local community, and particularly the children coming out of local schools, to think about a career with our business. And we're very embedded, as I said, into the local community. We have generations of the same family working for us in various different roles of, fathers and sons, mothers and daughters and cousins and uncles all over the organisation, from the part of West Yorkshire where we are. And absolutely, we bring people in. We have a very busy apprentice scheme. We have lots of schemes on the shop floor, and it's absolutely possible for people to rise up through the organisation with the training that we give and the opportunities that we give for people to take any role that they want within the organisation. And we have a lady at the moment who's running our Castleford factory, which is our new plant that we opened in 2015. She's been with the organisation 20 years. She started as a summer temp in the factory, and she's now running that factory, running that site as a senior leader in our organisation. So we absolutely believe that people can come up through the organisation and take whatever role they want to do. And what I always remember is everybody started somewhere. As I said earlier, my first job in this industry, my very first job was a paper boy. I worked on the tills in Sainsbury's for a while. I worked in McDonald's as a student, and I've been given the opportunity to take different responsibilities and bigger jobs through my career. And it's really important to me that we offer those same opportunities for people, and particularly for local people in the community of West Yorkshire where we are. It is tough from a jobs point of view. It is difficult in that part of the world, so it's really important that we support people through their career journeys through the right training and opportunity that we can provide. And I work very closely with the local schools. I'm a trustee of the local Multi-Academy Schools Trust, and we do a lot of outreach work on early careers with people locally so that they can understand that they can have a really great, fulfilling career with Haribo, but they can stay local in the local community if that's what they want to do.
Oh, if you did have somebody coming from the local community that just come out of college, just come out of university, and the first job is with Haribo, and you spoke to them on their first day, what's the bit of advice that you'd give to them?
Be curious. Go and find out as much as you can about the organisation, about the people within it. Ask as many questions as you possibly can, and just soak it all in. Don't rush to try and find solutions or change the world. Just really go out and be inquisitive and explore the business and the various different parts of the business. And then you can start to formulate your own views and your own opinions. When someone joins a business for the very first time, they have an absolute unique value to our business because they're seeing our business through fresh eyes. And that, you can only do that once. Once you've been in the business for 6 months or 6 years or 30 years or 50 years, like some of our colleagues have, you have become, a Hariboiana at that point. You are embedded, okay? Yeah. So you see it through the lens of Haribo. But the first day you walk through, you have a unique perspective on the organisation, and that's a really important perspective that we have to capture, because we learn so much from new people joining the organisation, and they may see things and think, well, that's a bit odd. Why do you do it that way? They might be absolutely right. We've just done it that way because that's the way we've always done it, and no one's questioned it until they walk through the door that day and ask that question. So curiosity and asking questions is the key for me, and that's how we can get amazing value from people when they first join the organisation. That's the best gift they can give us actually on their first day, is to be observant and ask questions.
Okay. And Haribo in the UK has had a couple of years of record sales, back to back. What's behind that recent financial success for you? Is there something that's changed, something that you've done?
Well, we've put in place a growth strategy a few years ago, and that really centred on a number of key drivers. But I think what we try to do is, as I said, deliver on that consumer need, really understanding consumers at a deep level, and producing great quality products that we know they're going to love, at great value for money. It's been a tough few years for the UK consumer, and we offer fantastic quality products at great value for money. And I believe that if you really understand the consumer and give the consumer what they want, you will be rewarded in the long run. And I think that's what we're seeing coming through in the performance and results of the brand, is that the love that consumers have for our products and the brand is really coming through. And coupled with that, we have a fantastic team, and everybody from our production team in our new factory who's improving all of the time, and we're expanding capacity, we're investing in the site, in new production lines. We're just building a new warehouse right now to try and expand production further. So that is meeting the consumer need. And then the fantastic teams that work it right across the business are just doing a better job every day. And thankfully, consumers are rewarding us by spending their hard-earned money on our products.
Yeah, I mean, you've obviously been boosted over the last couple of years with the record sales, as we just outlined, but the aftershocks of the budget are still being felt. Businesses across the country are looking at the detail and seeing how it's going to affect them. One of the biggest things is the increase in employer national insurance contributions. You employ hundreds of people across your sites, but then also, like any manufacturing business, you've got a supply chain as well. What's the impact of that hike on Haribo in the UK?
Well, I think it's still quite early days for us to try and assess what's come out of the budget and what this new administration really wants to do. But what I think is really interesting about the new government and what they're trying to put forward is this mission-led approach to support businesses. And let's see what policies come forward on that. I think it's exciting for us because food and drink is the biggest manufacturing industry in the UK. It employs nearly 500,000 people. It's about 38 billion of value. And it's an industry that has had challenges in the past from policies over successive governments, actually, that have been perhaps not as well coordinated as they could have been. And I think what this new government gives is an opportunity to have really coordinated, growth-led policies. And so we're looking forward actually to seeing what that growth strategy and industrial strategy is going to look like when we're ready to play our part in keeping a thriving food and drink manufacturing sector alive, not just in the UK, but particularly in West Yorkshire where we operate.
So you're not too concerned about the increase in costs that your business and your suppliers will face over the next year or so?
We've seen cost increases come and go over the years. Our job is to try and navigate that as best as we can. What's important for us, as I said, is that we continue to offer great value for our consumers, and that's our intention.
And tell me about the future of Haribo in the UK then. We touched on previously about the retail stores and expanding into that in a bit more. Is that really going to continue into the future? Are you going to open even more stores across the UK?
Yeah, we've got a plan to open more stores in the coming years. I think we're taking it, I would say, fairly steady.
Yeah.
So we're opening, around two stores a year, something like that, and we've done that over the last few years. So we have the next two stores in the pipeline ready to go. So they'll be opening in the coming months, and really then the future from there is around investment. As I said, into our factory in Castleford. We're building a new warehouse at the moment. We've got another new production line planned to go into that site next year, and that is to continue to produce innovative products. So we've got some fantastic new products They'll be hitting the market next year. We're really excited about those. And we're looking forward to, I suppose, delivering on that innovation pipeline and pushing the real Haribo experience that we can do through our own stores into a few more places across the UK next year.
Brilliant. Jon, thank you very much for coming on Boardroom Uncovered.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.